The electrical testing world requires a broad range of equipment to ensure we can keep the lights on for the country. Much of the equipment used would require capital investments that could potentially shutter companies were they not able to rent the various equipment needed to service the highly varied needs of their clients. Our next guest, Adam Straub, National Sales Manager for ARENT, ensures the power industry can meet the vast test equipment requirements that are critical to achieving the utmost in quality assurance, accuracy, and safety. Whether you're doing relay and protection, high pot and cable testing, injection testing, power factor testing, or even if you need an infrared camera for thermography, ARENT has you covered. After serving in the Army, Adam, a native of New York, decided to call the Houston, Texas area home. Unlike many of the folks we have spoken to who choose the electrical testing industry post military, he did not come from an Army prime power background, but rather stumbled into the field via his first role as a field technician with electric power systems. Adam then continued climbing the NETA ladder, working all the way up to a NETA 3 with Sabre Power before moving into management with Power Engineering Services and eventually becoming the Director of Field Services. Following his tenure with PES, Adam assumed the National Sales Manager role with ARENT, where he still utilizes his technical acumen to ensure his customers have the right tools and equipment for the job. Adam, thanks for so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to talk with me. Can you take a moment to discuss your professional history and how, of course, you ultimately decided to pursue a career supporting the power industry?
Yeah, no problem, Mike. I mean, kind of like you covered, I stumbled into it. I was a grunt in the infantry in the army, so I knew nothing. AC/DC was banned, man. I didn't know anything about electricity at all. I was just a big trigger puller, and I got out, and I always thought I was gonna be a cop, serve in law enforcement. I've got my college degree in criminal justice, and I got offered a corrections officer role for a certain amount of money, and I got offered a helper role with EPS for a higher sum of money, and that was it. That was really what opened the door. I new soldier, single, looking to get married, was just trying to get into a career and make some money. So EPS said, "Hey, we got a job for you. You worked a couple shutdowns on the weekend because I knew one of the managers there, and like you're a hard worker. Do you want to come learn a trade?" And little did I know, kind of what I was getting into. And now, 12 years later, had just about every position in a company, and now doing sales. What Still in the world, not out there turning wrenches anymore, or dealing with services, but it was a pretty easy transition because I knew the equipment, I knew the customers, and I got to stay with what I knew. So when Paul offered the opportunity, I kind of jumped at it, and I've been learning the sales side of things ever since. I'm not a sales guy. I'm a tech, right? I'm a tech. I'm a soldier. But I just want to help people just like I did in those roles, just a little bit different, right?
And it's amazing how different like the venue is from being a technician to going to sales. And I've had a couple of conversations with guests in the past. There is a lot of crossover there. Like if you can be a very strong salesperson that's transparent and authentic in those things, like it's a totally different world than being a technician. So you doing that is definitely going to help you be the most well-rounded individual you can be, in that, in my humble opinion, anyway.
Yeah, I mean, to me, the best salesmen are the people that have done the job. They know exactly what they're selling, and I guess the worst compliment you could ever get is, "Man, that guy's really a salesman," right? Because
That's
there's a
true.
little bit of sliminess to it. Of if you're trying to get over on somebody, the tech is just going to tell you, "Hey, this is what you need to do. This is what it's going to take to do it, and I want to get you from A to B and C through to the end of your shutdown or whatever it may be."
Absolutely, man. Well, I won't waste too much of your time, man. I know you got a thousand plates spinning here at once. So we'll kind of dive into the question set here. A lot of the folks who listen to our interviews happen to be veterans. Do you think that your time service, while you were in service, was beneficial to you working in the field service role, and more specifically NETA?
Somewhat, right? So because I didn't come from prime power, that army side of it, right? I didn't learn the discipline of testing or the theory of electrical engineering, whatever prime power is doing. I didn't get that aspect of it, but I was in the infantry, so I was used to being in real crappy situations, just like guys are, down in Texas when you're standing on top of a transformer. It's 120 degrees and you're breaking connections loose. So the
Absolutely.
hard work and dealing with the suck as it was in the military, that part helped, right? You know, walking out of high school or college and never having a real job um, would have been a culture shock to some of the kids that are just jumping right into the industry. So that part
Right.
was definitely beneficial. But then overall, the military teaches you discipline, right? You were in, and that discipline is successful in across the board, whether it was NITA or the gym or being a father or a husband. Like the discipline that you get from it is, you can't put a value on how important that is if you embrace it.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of the terms that we heard while serving is like the grit, the resilience, the fortitude, the discipline, all that stuff. I agree. It's just kind of the ability to suck it up and embrace the suck, almost, if you
That
will,
that's it, man.
But it
Embrace
also
it.
teaches the adaptability piece of it if you think about it, because you kind of have to, especially in a battle situation. I mean, things can change at the drop of a drop of a hat, if you will. You know what I mean? Being whatever the dynamic is. So
Yeah, no. They
couldn't
always
agree
said
with
no.
you more on that.
No plan survives first contact. Like you need to be able to take your situation and go from it. And I mean, that helps in something like this, right? You got to do a shutdown and you got to test a transformer and your power factor test that shit the bed. You got to wait. Sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. We're keeping it real. We're
your
keeping it
power
real.
yeah, your power factor test set stopped working, and you need to wait until you can get a replacement out there. So how do you move forward with your scope of work and keep your guys busy, or are you just going to sit around and twiddle your thumbs for 4 hours or maybe an entire day? So being
Right.
able to adapt and see your way through is a big part of it.
Absolutely. Now, do you believe? So we mentioned that you progress from field service to management, and then ultimately into sales. Do you find that your time in the field and management side of things have been helpful in the sales role?
100%. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I think that's the best progression for it. Had I gone from sales into management, I would have always looked at it from a sales perspective. Here, um, and if you ever get some of the AREN people, they can attest. I'm a pain in the butt for AREN because I work for our customers, right? I know what they're going through. So when something comes up and they say, "Hey, Adam, I need something in Houston, in Austin, in Dallas, like wherever it may be, I need it today." It's most likely because a customer just called them and say, "Hey, we just tripped offline. Get out here now. I don't care X, Y, or Z. I need you here." So I understand what they're dealing with because I've been there and I know how important it is to get the right stuff to the customer or to your technicians and be able to start working for your customer because that might be your first exposure with the customer, right? Hey, we've been knocking on your door for 6 months and um, you just tripped offline and your normal go-to company doesn't have anyone available. So, hey, you know what? We're going to give Micah's company a shot. This is your shot, right? If you screw it up, you're never getting another chance. So it's important
Absolutely.
to understand what they're going through.
Well, not only that, I think a lot of maybe perhaps from the sales perspective, and I could be off base with this, but like the amount of money that can be involved if the a plant trips offline to a busted switch gear or whatever it may be, like that is it can cost hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars in
Yeah.
productivity per day. So, for anybody that comes from a sales background and hasn't been exposed to the real the real time getting involved and doing the troubleshooting and dealing with the pressures that come along with getting that plant back online, because it's affecting the profitability of the company by that much. So I couldn't agree with you more on that.
Yeah, and then being able to take the stress away. Like, hey, I talked to Adam and I told him I got to do transformer testing. Like, that's it, right? I need the equipment out here to do transformer testing, knowing that like, all right, I've been there. I know what it is. They don't have to worry about their equipment, what they're going to get. I'm going to give them the right equipment to get the job done. They're not going to
Absolutely.
call and say, "Hey, we're doing transformer testing," and I send them a relay test set because I think I know what I'm doing, right? Like that
No,
part of it, I think, is
absolutely.
huge.
No, couldn't agree with you more, man. And it would be nice to have, and I mean this is wishful thinking, but have like literal technicians doing all those sales roles and kind of making that a next level to shoot for. If the compensation were adequate on that side of things, it helps reassure customers moreover than anything. I think so. I think that's spot on, man.
Yeah, and it's an
Now,
easy way to have a conversation with somebody too, right? Instead of, "Hey, I want
absolutely,
to sell you
because you
some,"
speak the
I
same
just want to sell
language.
you. Exactly. Like we have something to communicate about other than like, "Hey, I'm a sales guy. You need to buy something," right? It's
Right. Come
that's an
buy
awkward
my widget.
conversation.
No, 100%. And so during the intro, we kind of discussed the broad array of equipment used in electrical testing. I know you mentioned a power factor test set, vice a relay test set. Can you expand on that a bit to discuss why AREN is so vital to the industry and some of the things that you guys supply?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of touched on it earlier about the capital expense, right? There's nothing more than companies are going to spend money on than their test equipment, other than their actual employees. This stuff is expensive, just cut and
Can you
dry.
give us
So
some broad stroke comparisons? Like what's a new relay test set going for these days?
they're pushing $100,000 for pieces of test equipment, right? You know what I mean? And like, and even companies that have it that are private, that are owned by private investment firms, you may have enough to keep your normal crews busy, right? You know, yeah, you're used to doing 4 to 5 guy outages, but what do you do when you have the 25 man outage that needs to get done in 3 days, right? We don't buy the equipment for that. So being able to have the quantity for when they have a big outage or a long-term project, or the time and material stuff. Like I said, an outage at 3 o'clock in the morning somewhere to just get them what they need, where they need it, when they need it, and how many they need. That's a big one, right? If we only own one or two of something, we're not really that helpful, right? People don't usually come and say, "Hey, I just want one or two, relay test sets." If we need to do it, if we're going to rent, we're renting a lot of stuff for these big outages, and then
Absolutely.
getting them the equipment that's like the newest, the latest and greatest stuff, right? You bought something 5 years ago, it's like an iPhone, right? And something new comes out every year. So we want to be able
Absolutely.
to kind of work on their behalf to stay on top of like the market and what equipment's coming out. Not everything is an improvement just because it's new, but we try and do that trial for you and find out, hey, this is actually beneficial. It'll save you time. It'll make the guys' lives a little bit easier, and it's worth it. And then what you still had, from 5 years ago still works just fine. But when you do need to rent, here, we'll rent you the new thing. And then you kind of get to try it out and see if you like it before you buy it.
Now, do you guys get pretty decent feedback from the customers? Do you have a feedback loop there to kind of evaluate that, or is that most of that the testing of the new equipment? Do you guys do that in house?
Both. So each of our offices are fully stocked: transformers, breakers, relays, everything. So that way we can test. That's one of the reasons I came to ARENT, because I thought, man, sales and test equipment is weird. Like they don't know what they're doing. But the guys, when you rent the power factor test set, they've actually went through in the back on our oil field transformer and power factored it. So when we get equipment from customers, from the OEMs, we can put it to the test, right? I spent a day working with some new Raytech equipment early last year, testing it out and seeing how it was. So that way, when a customer comes to me, I can be the most informed sales guy that I can and say, hey,
Absolutely.
this thing's awesome, right? This will save you time, energy, everything across the board. So give it a shot if you have the availability to do it, or come to our office and try it too.
Oh, so they can actually go in office and come check out the test equipment. So if you have a VP of ops or somebody that wants to come in and just evaluate something new, is that something you guys offer?
Absolutely, yeah.
That's
We
awesome.
want people to come because it's twofold, right? You get to see the equipment and try it, but then you also get to see how we handle the equipment too, which is important to us. That test equipment companies across the board, you can't really separate yourself on equipment, right? You can only buy what's available. So
Right.
it's kind of twofold. How do you treat the equipment, and then the people that the customers deal with, are like that's how you can really separate yourself. So
The
we want to,
customer service always wins
yeah.
100%. Yeah.
So we want to get people in to be able to see that stuff.
That's awesome. Now, as far as equipment on hand, so you mentioned the one and twos aren't really going to be the core business. It's going to be those 25-man shutdowns where you're sending out multiple pieces of equipment. What does your inventory look like? Do you carry 150 relay test sets? You know,
No, it's an ongoing kind of reaction to demand, and we scale up throughout the year, so we're always adding to the fleet. Right, we don't start the year and say, hey, we need 10 relay test sets more than what we had last year. It's, hey, we think we need to add X amount, but if halfway through the year we're like, hey, crap, we've been sold out a couple times, well then we're going to adjust our numbers based off of what we really see. You can't wait and do that with everything because of lead times. But we try and make an educated decision to say, guys, offshore wind is a big one. So
hmm
69 kV cable testing, you need 120 kV high pot or VLF, right? So we bought one last year, and then we saw that, and there's a high demand for it. So we went and bought two more before. the demand has kicked up, right? And we have them, but
Right.
they're sold out again. So like it's a constant struggle of like, hey, we got them in, and then as soon as we got them in, people were like, oh, you have more of them, we want to take them. So it's a constant
Right.
balance of what is needed, and then how many is too many to own. So we have a good stock of everything as a ex tech. There have been a few times we're sold out. It's an unfortunate part of the business, but everybody is just like a company doesn't have enough to man their jobs. We have so many customers that we can't provide every single one of them with a relay test that if they needed it all at the same exact time.
Right, right. But and again, it does come down to that. The real time monitoring of demand signals and thing of that nature is just so important in making sure you're staying on top of the business. So I think that's definitely, in my humble opinion, the way to go about it. And again, differentiating yourself based on customer service can only do you well.
Yeah, man, that's my goal. I always want people to just say, hey, I need something. Let me just call Adam. Not oh, let me call Aaron, which is great if they want to, but for me, in whatever role I'm in, I said it when I was at PES. I don't want them to call PES. I want them to call Adam. Like, hey, I've got a problem. Adam can get it fixed, right? It's not always about making a sale. If I can help you get whatever you need, even if it makes no additional revenue for me, it's worth it, right? Because we're building that relationship listen, Adam's got my back. I'm going to trust him for whatever it may be.
Absolutely, and I relate with that statement because and I'll use recruiting as a parallel. It's one of those like everybody can go out and place somebody in some role, but if you don't have a true fundamental understanding of whatever your niche industry that you're in, and then truly working on building those relationships and becoming a partner, to me, sales is more of being a partner who is solving issues than it is of hey, go buy my dang widget. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
exactly,
So
exactly, man.
yeah, just I think that's the way to a great way to do business humbly. Some may disagree with us, but to me, I think that's spot on. And so you guys, as we mentioned, are one of the premier vendors, major sponsor of the Power Test event. That's part of the NITA family of things that they promote there. You're definitely a premier vendor. You must be keenly aware of market trends based on the equipment being rented. How are you looking as how is 24 shaping up for 2024 here, in your opinion?
I think you probably see it too with the demand for new recruits. It's nothing but exploding, for lack of a
Mm-hmm.
better term. Every year, it's like, man, the market grew so much. Uh, it's just I don't know when it's going to stop. Right? The push for green, net zero, renewable
Yes.
energy is on that whole side. They're just building and building and building solar and wind and hopefully nuclear and like whatever we can do to keep adding power to the grid. And then on the other side of it, they're building data centers. They're building
Mm-hmm.
semiconductor plants, which have a humongous draw on the grid. So supply and demand is gone through the roof, right? There's not enough
Yep.
supply. The demand is going up. So like we're playing catch up. So they keep building, which means that they need more people to test. So I I can't put a number on it, but man, I would
Right.
imagine it's going to be 10, 20 times what it was last year. It seems to
And that is
just
kind of what I'm seeing as well. And of course, there's a skilled trade labor shortage of folks that are coming into the industry, and that's a lot of why I put out the content that we put out, is trying to gear more of our veterans into the space because I think it's a very viable career path for those guys getting out of the backside. But you mentioned it, and I follow the industry writ large pretty closely. The grid hardening stuff is at the forefront of everybody's, for rectification and the specialty inverters on the transmission lines and trying to make the lines smarter, vice just coming in and putting in new hardware. The offshore wind plants that are going on the East Coast, the small modular reactors. And I agree with you. I think a lot of that is being driven by the data centers in Industry 4.0. And I talk about this with a couple of my other guests as well, is everything is data centric these days, and centered around that. And I don't see it slowing down, especially with AI. And I know that's in our question set coming up and kind of how you figure that'll play in. But like, all that stuff kind of is coming to bear. And like a lot of people, and I'm not a fear monger by any stretch of the imagination, but what the resilience of the grid is not very good right now. There's a lot of things that come into play, and it feels like we're on a rebirth, if you will, of trying to harden that and getting it ready for the future generation. So that's my take on it as well. I couldn't agree with you more. I think 2024 and beyond is kind of pushing, definitely. And in the 5 to 10, maybe heck, even 20 years, who knows how things are going to play out there. And that was going to be my next question is, 2024, I couldn't agree with you more. See it jamming along here. What do you think over the next 5 to 10? Do you see us slowing down or kind of continuing the upward trend? I think I know
No,
the
you.
answer, but
It's definitely going to keep trending up. Short of a catastrophic change in everyone's way of thinking. But you touched on it. One of the notes that I put in my answers, the hardening the grid of just understanding that the grid isn't where it needs to be is something that
mm-hmm.
I don't ever remember people talking about, even 10 years ago.
Ever.
And I'm not the old guy by any means, but when I was getting into the industry, no one was ever talking about the grid. It was just, hey, go test these transformers, test these cables, but that conversation, thankfully, is being more and more pushed to the center of everyone's attention and understanding, like, hey, the grid's not where it needs to be, and also the grid isn't just one giant electrical infrastructure for the country. There are multiple different ways that
The,
each places are fed. ERCOT is parts of Texas.
yep.
What is it? Out in Alabama and Tennessee, they have their own. They have their own stuff out there. Southern Power is out there.
Yep.
Right. There are multiple different entities throughout the country. So people are realizing it that, like, hey, it's not the best way to do it. And you said hardening the grid, talking about it, making sure that supply meets the demand. Because if you just keep pulling and pulling and pulling, and there isn't power to be pulled, it's nothing good comes from it, right? That's when no one has power for a long period of time. Instead of, hey, we had a rolling blackout to, like California may have, to persuade that massive failure.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
Well, and then
it's
you'll see
definitely
some
not
of the
going
other stuff.
anywhere.
No, definitely not. And you'll see like there's a big push towards microgrids and more, EV storage of power so that they can deal with the peak and variable times and all the other stuff that kind of comes into play. And then you
Yeah,
mentioned the ERCOT. There's a lot of grid interconnect talk going on right now as
yep,
well as far as connecting the various aspects. So
yeah. It's
totally
funny.
agree with it.
So growing up in New York, we never worried about power, right? It never got too hot. It never got too freezing cold that we had to worry about it. And my mom just recently moved down here, and this past summer, I take the ERCOT warnings pretty seriously. I was here when during the freeze. It was miserable to not have power, and if me telling someone not to use the dryer at night or turning the air conditioner up 2 degrees makes a difference, then at least I can say I did my part. So I would tell her, hey, when you get home from work, like, you don't use the dryer right now, or wait until later. And she couldn't wrap her brain around, like, why that mattered. And I was like, there is energy out, like energy in has to equal it out. Like, if it's
It
not there,
has
you
to.
can't take
There's
it. You can't
the
take it.
physics don't change.
Yeah, it's not just sitting on the lines waiting for people to use it.
Right.
So
Now,
it's funny.
from a battery storage, I know there's a lot of talk around battery storage capability. There's some new commercial projects coming along online. I've seen like whole gigantic buildings that are now like storage units. Are you seeing, from a testing perspective, are folks kind of leaning into the not necessarily ups, but the battery storage side of things?
Yeah, I think that kind of goes hand in hand with solar. Right when I was at PES, solar was making a big boom. And that was it started 4 years ago. I mean, it started before, but we actually commissioned the biggest solar farm in Texas at the time. It was like 260 megawatt. It's nothing now, right? In 4 years,
Right.
it's pathetic compared to what they're doing now. And then the batteries are probably, I'd say, like a year and a half ago. I feel like they started kind of catching up, and I know that Texas has got a 1 gigawatt BESS station that is being done up. I think it's up by Dallas this year.
Mm-hmm.
So everything is just exponentially accelerating, and
Well,
it's huge. That's where most of the testing companies are, to be honest. NETA, TEG, whatever it may be. A lot of the industry right now is on. I'd be surprised if there wasn't a testing company on a solar site somewhere. Every company has had to have touched renewables at this point because so much
absolutely.
of it has to be tested.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's probably what's driven the battery storage is now that we're seeing so much renewable energy being the solar and the wind. Like a lot of folks don't realize once the sun's not shining, if there's not a storage capacity, then it's unable to be pushed to the grid. And then you have to have your natural gas providers or coal providers or anybody else to kind of come online to remedy the shortfall in power expectation type thing.
Yeah,
So
it's a fine mix of everything. It's not just a, hey, we got solar and wind and we're good, because when it's calm and it's dark, well, then you have no power. So there has to
right.
be that balance of what everybody wants of, hey, don't do too much gas and oil. Don't do too much renewables for the people that live and die by. Like there's a happy medium for everybody to be
Has to
able to
be.
find. Like it's just you want resiliency. So if something does go down, you've got something else to pick it up.
No, I couldn't agree with you more on that one. And it is funny. And like, I know you and I said, not touching on politics by any stretch of the imagination.
It's
I
not
don't want to
politics. It's
touch
art.
that with a 10-foot pole, but like, there has to be a happy medium until, the manufacturing and the technology and everything has to catch up. You have to have the ability to store the energy. And I think that's probably the biggest hurdle we're seeing right now, is, like you said, the BESSes that are coming online, the battery energy
Energy
storage
storage.
solutions, I think, or something like that, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think it's
Um,
battery energy storage stations.
Stations, there you go, solution stations, man.
Station, same thing. Battery places.
Battery stuff.
Yeah.
But and then like I'm big in the small modular reactors. I'm loving watching what TerraPower and NuScale and all those guys are doing. So we'll see how that turns out as well. But I mean, the bottom line is everybody's saying that it is the way of the future, and that's kind of where we're going. So I'm very curious to see how all that plays out in the end. It's we're living in some interesting technological advancements, and who knows, man? I'm going to look back and heck, I'll watch this conversation in 10 years and be like, huh, we were on the mark or we weren't.
Yeah, we were so far off. Couldn't. Yeah. No, I agree. It's definitely interesting to see kind of where everything takes shape, and it's exciting, right? To see that like, hey, there's multiple different avenues that we can go down. It's not like, holy crap, we have no other options, right? There are there
Absolutely.
are there are pretty good options that are out there.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more on that one. And then, like I said, I know we're kind of tracking along here, and I don't want to burn up too much of your time. So, technology is constantly evolving and seems to require less proficiency to operate some of the test equipment on the market today than in years past. Do you feel like that's true based on your experience?
Yeah, 100%. Technicians they're not keeping up with everything, and there are less and less qualified guys coming in, and a lot of the older guys they're on their way out, so they're not teaching the younger guys the skills that are needed to kind of keep up and know what's going on. Manufacturers are making it so that way your software will tell you if it passes or it fails, based off of pre-configured data for their standards, but they're not going to tell you if things are trending bad. You need to know it. You need to know if your your software is good, right? You can use RTS to test relays, but if your RTS code for that particular relay is wrong, then it's going to look like a relay failed when in fact it's the tool that you're using. So there's definitely a gap from some of the older guys that have to used to do everything manually, know if it was done, to the guys that are using new really efficient, really good pieces of test equipment, but are just relying on software to tell you if it's good or bad.
And that kind of emulates or echoes a lot of what I hear from tons of different folks in the industry. Is like the test equipment has literally gotten to that good, but what if you have those situations that it's not? And then the ability to think critically through those issues, and then do something if you have to do some injection testing or something like that to kind of work through the issues that you're seeing with the test equipment. And it seems like that may be something that's setting us up for less than ideal success in the industry, as the equipment tends to get better.
Yeah, it's really the what do you do when it fails that is going to be a struggle. I think moving forward, hey, like your customer pays you to test their transformers, and your transformer fails. Well, why did it fail? Right? Did you take your troubleshooting steps? Did you do your necessary steps first? Right? Did you make sure you had a good ground? Did you clean your bushings? Did you inspect things? And then when it failed, what troubleshooting steps did you do? Did you make sure that your test set just wasn't bad? Because like you're relying on things, you need to make sure that your tools aren't the
Mm-hmm.
problem, that the technician's not the problem. And then if you don't know what avenue do you have to reach out to kind of figure out, hey, it failed, and I need to be able to give my customer an answer of what's actually wrong. Right? It can't just be it failed.
No, absolutely. I totally agree with you. Now, I'm not sure if there's any, and this is totally outside of my wheelhouse, but there's a lot of conversation spun up around AI right now. Do you think AI is going to have any impact on test equipment moving forward, or have you seen anything that kind of incorporates the AI side of the house?
So I hope AI. First, I haven't seen AI in anything, and I hope it stays out of the actual pieces of test equipment. Um, I want techs. I hope technicians still have to figure out how to interpret their data and know what's going on, right? Manufacturers are producing some pretty cool stuff. Make combination test sets where it'll do TTR and wiring resistance. I was talking to an OEM at a conference, an insulation resistance and a contact resistance test set. So the guys can be more efficient, where the same test set can do multiple things. But I personally don't want AI to get into it to tell you your results are good or bad. Where I think it can play a pretty cool and really important role is reviewing and trending data once it's been kind of shoved into it. So PowerDB is a database that customers and test companies use to save data, right? So if you do multiple year shutdowns, you can go back to it and say, hey, what were the test results, a year prior, 2 years prior? And that's something that a lot of customers don't pay attention to, and honestly, a lot of companies don't really pay attention to is what was your historical data? What's it doing? What's the trend look like? I keep using transformers because they're the most expensive part in any system. So if you got a GSU and it was commissioned 3 years ago, and every year your power factor and your winding resistance is degrading, but it's still within your acceptable limits, it shouldn't be degrading that fast.
Right.
But if you look at the previous data, you can say, hey guys, there's something wrong, right? Let's figure it out. Let's look at the system as a whole. Maybe it's an undersized transformer. Maybe there's something else that you don't know. But the life of this transformer is being shortened substantially every single year. There's something else going on, and a lot of customers don't do that because they just bid. They take the lowest bid each year. Hey, customer or testing company X was at $1,000 this year. It's never $1,000, by the way. But then the next year it was $900, and they just keep changing, and then they don't pass the reports to the customer, like to the previous or the next testing company. And most testing companies don't even ask about it, which is something that I think should change in the industry.
Oh, couldn't agree with you more.
I was trying to get
if you're
my
not
guys
tracking the degradations, how are you going to know? That's literally how you monitor the performance of whatever it may be. And then transformers, the lead times right now, I'm seeing a year, 2 years for some of these things, if not more.
Yeah, for GSUs, you're looking at years out if you wanted to get one right now, which is, everything works great, but if you don't have a transformer, hey, that new substation, right, that's great. It might look really nice, but it's not going to do anything for you.
Right.
So that stuff's ultra important. I think AI could have a really good avenue there where it can take your data, right? I think they call it large language models, where you just put in a bunch of data and it tells you based off of that what you're looking for, and it can trend your stuff and say, hey, there's something else going on. And maybe if it's good enough, it can take the data from breakers that are upstream or downstream of it and combine that with the test results and say, hey, it's this breaker's got a pulling more than what it's supposed to, or whatever it may be.
Right.
I think it has a really good space for it there. But as far as the test equipment, I hope I never see it in it. I think
I agree with you.
We really got to focus on getting our techs up to speed and then constantly learning too. Right? I've been out at the field for a couple of years, and I know that if I were to step back in it tomorrow, I'm not going to be as sharp as what I was. Right? I still know how to do it, but I'm not as good as what I was when I was at NETA 3 running jobs and had my hands in there, tracing out circuits for troubleshooting purposes. So the education up front, which Richmond Community College is doing a great job getting those kids out the door with a phenomenal foundation. But then the continuing education stuff is really important too. They need to keep learning and keep understanding, and diving deep instead of just saying, hey, I got a little bit of knowledge on everything. Like let's get pretty deep at it. And that goes back to, the discipline aspect of what we talked about earlier. If you want to be good at anything, you need to keep doing it, right? It's not going to happen tomorrow or next week or next month. You need to continue to stay disciplined and try and improve yourself at your task or your goal day at a time, week at a time. And before you know it, you'll look back 5 years and be like, man, I didn't know anything 5 years ago, or whatever it may be, right? You want to be in better shape. Like you look at yourself 5 years of just doing the work every single day, and that pays off. But you need to be disciplined enough to do it day in and day out and just want to be better at it.
Absolutely. Well, and I think that's one of the great things about the NETA program and NICET. They have the requirements for the mandatory continuous training and development stuff for the CEI, CEUs, whatever, whichever program you're, whatever they're calling them for that aspect. And I think that's a
Yep.
very, very, very valuable thing for testing up. But then again, what if you get to that NETA 4? I'm not a NETA technician, but I believe they even have their CTDs that they have to maintain to maintain accreditation at 3 and 4, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to lose my my NETA 3 here this year, which is a real kick in the butt to me because I'm not in a NETA company anymore. I can't submit credits, but you have to have a certain amount every 2 years
Mm-hmm.
to keep it. And it doesn't matter if you're a NETA 3 or a NETA 4. If you lose it, you drop down a level and then you just keep dropping down. Thankfully, it's not just hey, if you're a NETA 4 and you failed to get your credits because you got out of the industry, you're just back to a NETA 1. But
Right.
it's still it's a good amount of credits too. I think someone will correct me, but I think it's 60 credits over 2 years to maintain it. So that's not a small amount.
No, not at all. And now, so even with you not being at a NETA company anymore, is there not a way, like if you go to Power Test and you can sit through some of the seminars and get the CTDs, or is it not worth it at this point type thing?
I'm going to beg and I'm going to plead because I really don't want to lose it. It was a
No, I know, man.
big point of pride for me when I got it. I do have to point the finger and fault at NETA on that one. There's a shortage of qualified NETA techs. So to have me lose it just because I'm not in a NETA company,
Right.
but we're AREN's a NETA alliance member. It's a weird thing. I think I should be able to keep it, but that's just a personal opinion.
No, and you're not the first one that I've heard that critical piece from. Is there is such a shortfall for techs. I believe the numbers like there may be 20,000 total techs in the industry altogether, with about a half split between 1 and 2s and 3s and 4s, or some mix there. But by limiting that and not offering the opportunity or just holding it accountable at the NETA company, and I know they have their reasons for doing it, and maintaining the prestige of the organization, but it seems it may be biting the end users, if you will, in the end, because there's just a shortage of text due to some of the overlap there. Because if you work up and you're a prime example, you moved from the technician side to the sales side, but you're still actively involved in the space. And that's pretty important, and to me it also adds some credibility to the organization if you're supporting the end state of a NETA organization. Then but again, that's my humble opinion and your humble opinion
Yeah.
or personal gripes. And
Our
maybe Ken or somebody over there, maybe they see this and like, oh, okay, but it is what it is.
our CEO Paul is actually doing a presentation at Power Test about. I'm not going to get every part of it right, but it's about the status of NETA and the numbers of NETA techs and NETA companies throughout, and kind of a 1,000-foot view of kind of what it looks like. And we talk about it a lot at work. Paul and I have pretty good conversations about it. But I think if you're at Power Test and you kind of want to hear a little bit more about it, I'd sit in on his presentation about it. He's been working on it.
I plan on it
for quite a while.
Definitely plan on it. I'm going to be there with bells on, man. Like I said, this stuff is just purely fascinating for me. I came from I learned all the ACDC theory in the Navy, and but literally just power, just in general, fascinates me. And it's amazing, mom goes and turns the lights on. She doesn't give any thought to how they turn on or what it is. And like we mentioned earlier, the grid is, we're so used to seeing power poles and everything, like you don't even see them anymore, and that, I think that's crazy just to consider. But to me, it's fascinating, and looking at the wheeling of power through transmission lines and the ability to transmit power from the West Coast to the East Coast to sell it to the highest bidder or whatever it may be in there, with the form of wheeling. It's fascinating stuff, and so any opportunity I get to learn more about it, I'm all about. So it's just amazing stuff for sure.
Yeah, it's good stuff, man, and it's a great career to be in. One of the things that young guys or veterans
Mm-hmm.
Coming out of the military, whether you don't care about power or not, you just want a good, solid career path. This is a hell of a one to grab because if electricity goes away, no one cares what you do for a living anymore. You're just trying to actually survive.
Absolutely.
So you got job security for the rest of your life as long as electricity is around. So I recommend it to. And it's a lucrative one. I mean, as cut and dry as it is, people pay a lot of money to keep the lights on.
Absolutely. And I'm seeing it and I've had several offline conversations with business owners and things like that, and doing market comp rates on salaries and stuff. it's only going to go up. We went from 50 to 60 an hour, or I would say 40 to 50 was what I was seeing about a year and a half ago for NETA threes. And now we're up in the 55s, up to $60 an hour, with about 55 being the average for what we're seeing for NETA threes right now. That's a good living for somebody who can go do a 2-year vocational program and then get your accreditation and continue working your continuing training and development credit. So I'm with you, man. I highly encourage everybody that's looking. And I mean, welders are in the same position as well. It's just skilled trades overarchingly are, we need them. And, not everybody can be an influencer today as much as they would like to, I imagine.
It'll work its way back, right? I know when I was growing up, it was go to college, which is still great. Like if you want to go to college, go. Like there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. But no one had ever told me to learn a trade growing up, right? It was go to high school, go to college, get a degree, get a job. I did it obviously differently. I went to high school, college, and then I joined the military. But you hear more about, hey, let's learn a trade, right? I mean, my kids will be supporting whatever they want to do, but the idea of you have to go to college it's not going to be shoved down their throats. It's hey, you need to do something worth doing, right? And a trade is worth doing. You'll have look at the life that mom and dad have built for you. She works in the school system. Dad learned a trade, and you got a good life.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a demeaning thing. Like I feel like at one point in time in the past, trades were like demoralizing. If you're a trade, right? You're a mechanic or you're a welder. You're just too dumb to go to college, which is not even the case whatsoever.
Not at all.
The math involved in power is nuts.
Math
right?
and physics.
Never knew it when I was getting into it.
Yeah.
So you look at someone that deals with electricity, they're not dummies. And I hope that people take that thought process and kind of throw it in the trash. The people that are keeping your lights on, keeping your water flowing, whatever it may be, they're people to be respected, and they bust their butts. It's not easy jobs.
No, not at all. It's a lot of hard work, a lot of mental acuity, like you mentioned, and understanding of STEM stuff between science and physics, and the ability to troubleshoot, which is one of those very, very hard things to grasp for a lot of people, and understanding how to use the 1 lines and the 3 lines and everything else. So I couldn't agree with you more on that. And I've got a couple of those damn degrees, and they didn't really benefit me, between an MBA and electrical. Well, I mean, I guess the electrical power tech degree kind of helps, but other than that, it's true. And I think there needs to be a resurgence of folks that are willing to, look at the skilled trade space and go into that space. So I couldn't agree with you more on that one, man. 100%.
Yeah, I think the guys at Richmond Community College are doing a good job of pushing that. And I know there are a couple other campuses that are supposedly pushing programs that are like that. And they're doing a good job of, hey, you can check the box, right? You went to college, but you also learned to trade while you're at college.
Absolutely. And those 2 years, I don't know if you saw the interview I did with Brian Terry and Trinity Stanley up at Richmond Community College, but truly phenomenal stuff. The hands-on experience those guys are getting, the practicum and theory of the ACDC and, all the other, formulas, Fourier, Laplace, whatever it may be, and
the guys at Richmond are great. I actually went down there when I was at PES for the job fairs to recruit some of their hires, and I think there's a handful of RCC graduates that work for PES still, and they're great. And it's cool that they walk out into their little substation and hey, you see what you're going to work on day in and day out.
Right, exactly. Climbing up and doing all the transformer testing, and Trinity took us through they literally cover everything from the transformer taps to what oils are filled with, the medium used inside, and everything. So definitely, and I know they're not the only ones; they're just the ones that get a lot of the coverage. But yeah, I can't speak highly enough of those folks over there. And now, so looking back, you've been doing this game for a hot minute. You've worked your way all the way up. If you could go back and talk to 20-year-old Adam, do you have any advice that you would give yourself from now to then?
Yeah, we touched on it earlier. Just be patient and stay disciplined, right? There's the old saying that nothing worth having happens overnight. Right? If you want it, you got to work for it, and just know, right? Like I mentioned, I'm a big fitness guy, so knowing that your goals are your goals, right? Certain people have health goals, career goals, personal life goals, just whatever that goal is. You can't get there all at one time, right? You need to take steps to get there. So just be patient and stay disciplined, right? it will come as long as you kind of do the right things and continue to try and get there. You will get there. And that's, like I said, whether it's a personal one, a family one, a financial one, right? You don't have to be a millionaire to do certain things. You just have to be disciplined in the way you go about it.
No,
And I wish
absolutely.
younger people, I sound like the old guy now, but yeah, like the kids don't get it. I didn't get it. I don't expect my kids to get it. It's a hard lesson to learn, and I think you really only learn it with time.
I agree with you. So the best lessons are the ones you actually have to go through. And that was one of those, things Dad used to say is like, I'm going to try to save all those bumps and bruises and you having to take those. But ultimately, a lot of it, like you mentioned, is you're going to have to learn it yourself through trial and tribulation. It's just what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. You're going to get your butt kicked in life. Like it's going to happen, right? No one's life is a complete sunshine all the time.
Right.
Just know that you're going to have more good days than you are bad.
Absolutely. Now, we already kind of talked, we've been talking through it throughout the entirety of the conversation, but as it pertains to veterans and those that are looking to pursue a career in the power industry, is that something like if you could look back and go, would you do it again? And would you recommend it to other veterans as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, 100%. I live, a very nice lifestyle. I'm home with my kids. I get to support them and take care of them. And it's all because of, obviously I work really hard at what I do to get there, but I got a path to show that hard work and, kind of take me to where I wanted to be. So I would recommend it to anybody, veterans, anyone that is willing to do manual labor, because it is manual labor in the very beginning, right? You're the guy on top of a transformer. You're the guy inside switchgear cleaning and doing the dirty work. But as long as you do that dirty work, you earn the respect of the guys that know what needs to get done, and they start teaching you. And then before you know it, you're the guy teaching the young guy, and then before you know it, you're on an interview with Micah.
I don't know if that's anybody's pinnacle, but we'll take it.
No, but then 10 years later, man, you're talking about it when you don't even realize how far you've progressed, right? Like, what the hell am I doing here? 10 years ago, standing on top of a transformer, and I didn't know what was going on other than, hey, there's 4 bolts on top of this bushing, break them loose real quick.
No, absolutely. And like you said, it's just the trials and tribulations of life and paying your dues at the various levels, getting up to, to where you are now. And I couldn't agree with you more. I always like to ask that question just of everybody is like, would you see it? And, just through the various conversations I'm having, that's something that resonates pretty often with everyone is like, it's a very viable, stable career, tons of upward mobility, if you're willing to, like you said, do the hard work and put in the reps and sets to get there, and just like anything else. So couldn't agree with you more, man. And we're wrapping up here. We're going on probably an hour. I know we had that little stop gap in the middle. But and more than willing to not be a connector if you don't want to. But if somebody has questions about the industry or about renting test equipment, where's the best way they can find you?
Shoot me an email. My email is adam@a-rent.com. It's a piece of cake. I can give you my phone number. You can put it in there too. Even if it's not about test equipment, one of the things that I miss about operations and being an NCO in the military was kind of helping lead people, right, and show them, hey, if you just do these things, like, you will move forward in your career path or even your personal life, right? In the Army, it was you deal with soldiers that are dealing with personal issues all the time, and they don't really have anyone else to go to. So I found that being able to help the younger guys, or even the older guys, like just someone that needs help or some advice on it, that's really what I love to do. And I loved it when I was at PES, taking the guys and helping them move forward. A-Rent's a little bit different, but if I can get a technician that has a question and then I can help them, like, I'm here. I'm a resource for whatever it may be.
I love it, man. And I'll definitely host your email and your phone number on there if LinkedIn will let us. I don't know if it will. Are you on LinkedIn pretty often as well? Not really.
Yeah. No, all the time.
Okay.
All the time. I mean,
I live over there, so I have to ask the question. It's one of those things.
No, LinkedIn's it's a good tool. Right? It's a small industry, but there's still thousands of people that are a part of it. So you can't find anybody. Everyone just through word of mouth. You got to do some searching, and LinkedIn's the best way to do it.
Right on. Well, and I'll definitely link you on the LinkedIn stuff as well. But my friend, thank you so much for your time. I'll let you get back to your busy day. Do you have any last minute parting thoughts for the audience before I let you go?
No, just give me a call if I can help. That's
Awesome. Awesome, man. Well, thank you again so much for your time today. I appreciate you. And until the next one, guys, Mike out.